Welcome to Chronos Drift. We hope you enjoy tonight's story, a journey designed to escort you through time and carry you into your best dreams. We would love the hell out of you if you subscribed. Now take a few deep breaths and settle in. I was in the outer agency briefing hall on the Arcturus, a place where the air always feels charged, like the universe is listening. The hall's crystalline walls shimmered with slow-moving constellations, each one a living map of temporal fractures across human history. That's when the alert arrived. Not as text, not as a report, but as a single image projected into the air. A modern laptop, glowing faintly on a straw mattress inside a stone cell. The timestamp, 1492. The location, Sevilla. A moment later, the crystalline walls pulsed with a sharp ripple of light. Every agent knows that signal. It means, report immediately. Graham and I stepped into the corridor at the same time, already moving fast. Neither of us spoke. We followed the guidance lights toward the central briefing chamber. Only once we entered did Saren step forward. He is tall, luminous, and calm. Saren is our Arcturian supervisor and spiritual consultant, the one the agency sends when a mission touches both time and faith. His voice resonated like distant chimes. "Agents," he said, "we have a Category Red religious instability event in progress." The image rotated slowly in the air, revealing more details. The stone walls, the iron latch on the door, the faint scorch marks where torches had been carried too close. "This laptop computer from the Earth year 2029, Saren continued, belongs to Sister Beatriz de la Cruz, an outer agency operative born in the 15th century. She has returned to her era without authorization. The Inquisition has discovered her technology." Saren's silver eyes, reflective, ancient, settled on us. "If the tribunal deciphers even a fraction of what is on that machine," he said, "the timeline will collapse into religious conflict centuries ahead of schedule." The constellations on the walls flickered, shifting into patterns of potential futures, all of them catastrophic. Saren lowered his voice. "Retrieve the laptop. Locate Sister Beatrice. Contain the event." Then he added something he rarely said. "And be gentle. Her actions come from love, not treason." The mission began. The briefing room dissolved into motion the moment Saren dismissed us. Guidance lights along the crystalline floor shifted from amber to gold. The agency's way of saying move with urgency, but stay centered. On Arcturus, even the architecture knows how to speak. Graham fell into step beside me as we crossed the hall, our boots echoing softly against the polished obsidian walkway. The constellations overhead shifted again, forming a narrow ribbon of light that pointed toward the transit wing. "Beatrice," Graham said under his breath. "I didn't think we'd ever see her name on a red alert." "Neither did I." Sister Beatriz de la Cruz wasn't just another operative. She was one of the agency's rare temporal natives, born in the 15th century, recruited for her intuition, her insight, her ability to read human intention like scripture. She had completed missions in multiple eras, always returning home with a quiet grace that made her seem untouchable. Until now. Ayana Redbird walked ahead of us, her stride quiet, her posture steady. She had been summoned the same moment we were, which meant the agency anticipated emotional volatility. They sent Ayana when a mission required spiritual grounding, intuitive insight, or protection of someone who was unraveling. Her braids caught the soft blue glow of the guidance lights. She didn't look back, but she knew we were behind her. Ayana always knows. We reached the transit chamber, a vast circular space where time doors shimmered like vertical pools of liquid starlight. Saren was already there, waiting beside the portal already calibrated to 1492 Sevilla. He looked at the three of us with that calm, ancient steadiness only Arcturians possess. "Before you depart," Saren said, "you need to understand the pattern." He gestured, and the suspended image of the laptop reappeared, the straw mattress, the stone cell, and the laptop computer. "Beatrice did not return to her era for strategic reasons," Saren continued. "She returned for personal ones. Her motivations are rooted in love, not logic. That makes her unpredictable." Ayana stepped closer to the image, her expression softening. "She's afraid," Ayana said quietly. And she's acting from that fear. Saren inclined his head. Exactly. Your rule is simple. Do not treat her as a threat. Treat her as someone who is drowning. The constellations overhead dimmed, leaving only the shimmering outline of the time portal door. Saren stepped back. Enter carefully. The Inquisition is already in motion. Graham and I exchanged a glance, the kind that says ready without needing to speak. Ayana moved with us, her presence steady and grounding. We stepped toward the portal. The mission had begun. Crossing a time threshold is never gentle. The moment we stepped through the portal, the world snapped into the dim interior of the Sevilla field office, hidden beneath a carpenter's workshop on the edge of the city. The air was thick with sawdust and olive oil, a disguise meant to blend the agency's presence into the daily rhythm of 1492. Ayana steadied herself with a slow breath. Graham moved through the room with practiced efficiency, checking supplies and confirming the field office's seals were intact. I felt the stabilizer hum settle against my spine, the familiar signal that the transition was complete. The room was small, lit by a single lantern. Shelves lined the walls, stocked with era-appropriate clothing, currency, forged documents, and the tools needed to pass unnoticed in 15th century Sevilla. Graham tossed me a folded bundle of garments. Lay brother attire. Standard issue, he said. Ayana selected a simple wool dress and veil, her movements calm and deliberate. She always adapted quickly. Her presence made even the harshest eras feel less jagged. I pulled on the coarse tunic and belt, adjusting the hood. The fabric scratched against my skin, grounding me in the reality of the century we just stepped into. Graham checked the currency pouch. Maravedis and reals. Enough to get us through a gate or past a guard. Ayana lifted a small, palm-sized tracking disc from the supply shelf, obsidian, etched with faint silver lines. It pulsed once in her hand. She's broadcasting, Ayana said quietly. The beacon is active. Every operative carried one, implanted beneath the skin, dormant until extraction protocols were triggered. Sister Beatrice's was now lit. Ayana studied the readings. She's moving. Slowly. She's still inside the convent complex. We stepped out of the field office and into a narrow alley behind the carpenter's shop. Morning light cut across the stones, sharp and cool. Bells rang from the cathedral. Smoke curled from nearby hearths, mingling with the scent of citrus from the market stalls. Sevilla was awake and dangerous. We moved quickly, staying close to the shadows as we approached the convent. The stone walls rose ahead of us, stark, imposing, holding secrets behind every archway. Graham paused near a side entrance, listening. 2 guards inside, he murmured. Routine patrol. Ayana checked the beacon again. We waited for the guards to pass, then slipped through the narrow doorway into a dim corridor. The air was cool, carrying the faint scent of incense and damp stone. Candles fluttered along the walls, their light barely reaching the floor. We moved carefully, matching the pace and posture of lay workers. No one looked at us twice. Ayana slowed, watching the device. She's here, she said. We turned down a narrow passageway and reached the courtyard. The beacon pulsed again. Inside, Ayana whispered. We crossed the courtyard and entered the cell wing. The straw mattress lay exactly as it had in the alert image. Indented, rumpled, still holding the shape of someone who had sat there recently. But the laptop was gone. Ayana's breath tightened. They've taken Sister Beatrice and secured the laptop. I scanned the room. The faint metallic scent of the battery still lingered. Minutes ago, not hours. Ayana knelt beside the mattress, her hand hovering over the indentation. I sense extreme fear, she whispered. Graham listened toward the corridor. They're moving the laptop to the tribunal chamber. I nodded. We find Sister Beatrice first. The chanting had stopped. The voices had grown louder. The Inquisition was already in motion. And Beatrice was somewhere inside this building, frightened, alone, and running out of time. The mission shifted. We weren't just retrieving a laptop. We were rescuing one of our own. The convent's lower corridors were colder than the rest of the building, narrow stone passages that carried the faint smell of damp earth and old secrets. We followed the slow pulse of Beatrice's beacon as it drifted deeper beneath the structure. Ayana held the tracking disc close, watching the silver lines shift. "She's below us now," she whispered. "Far below." We turned a corner and stopped. Two nuns stood ahead, speaking in urgent whispers. One clutched her rosary so tightly the beads cut into her skin. Her voice trembled. "I told them," she said. "I told them what I saw in her cell. The glowing thing, the unnatural thing. I told them she was consorting with forces no holy woman should touch." The other nun looked horrified. "Sister Beatrice saved your life last winter. She carried you to the infirmary herself." "I know," the trembling nun whispered. "But mercy does not erase corruption. They took her to the underhall. Father Salazar said the truth will come out of her one way or another." Her companion flinched. "The underhall is for criminals." "She brought it on herself," the frightened nun insisted, though her voice cracked on the last word. The two moved on, unaware of us. Ayana's jaw tightened. Graham's expression darkened. We continued down the corridor until it ended at a heavy wooden door reinforced with iron bands. A cold draft seeped through the cracks. Graham pushed it open. A narrow stone staircase spiraled downward into darkness. We descended carefully. The air grew colder, the walls slick with moisture. The hum of Beatrice's beacon echoed faintly, guiding us deeper. At the bottom, the passage opened into a cavernous chamber, far larger than any convent should have possessed. Torches flickered along the walls, their flames struggling against the damp air. And suspended from the ceiling were cages. Iron lattices hung by thick chains, each holding a prisoner shackled at wrists and ankles. Their faces were pale, hollow, eyes reflecting terror and resignation. Below each cage sat a torture device. A spiked chair, its iron seat covered in sharpened points. A strappado frame, ropes dangling from overhead beams meant to wrench shoulders from their sockets. A waterboarding table angled downward toward a bucket and cloth. A whipping post stained dark from years of use. The Inquisition's tools for extracting confessions. Ayana's breath caught. "This is an interrogation hall," she whispered. Graham scanned the rows of cages. "They built this to break people." The beacon pulsed again, stronger now. Ayana pointed toward the far end of the chamber. "There." We moved beneath the suspended cages, careful not to draw attention. Prisoners watched us with hollow eyes, too afraid or too broken to speak. At the far wall, one cage hung above a long wooden rack fitted with ropes, pulleys, and iron braces, the stretching rack. Inside that cage, head bowed, was Sister Beatriz de la Cruz. Graham exhaled. We found her. The footsteps behind us were getting closer, echoing through the underhall like distant thunder. We didn't have time for strategy or finesse. We moved straight toward Sister Beatriz's cage. She hung suspended above the stretching rack, shackled at wrists and ankles, her head bowed. As we approached, her lips moved in a faint, broken whisper. "Marisol. Marisol." Ayana's expression softened. Graham glanced over his shoulder, listening for the approaching guards. I stepped closer to the cage. "Sister Beatriz," I said quietly, "we're here to get you out of this place. We'll talk once you're safe." Her eyes fluttered open, unfocused but aware enough to recognize we weren't Inquisition. Ayana moved to the chain mechanism mounted into the stone wall. It was crude but functional, a simple iron crank controlling the height of the cage. She gripped the handle and began lowering it, slow enough to avoid noise, fast enough to beat the incoming guards. The cage descended until it hovered just above the stretching rack. Graham drew a small pry tool from his cloak and snapped the lock. The door swung open with a soft metallic groan. I stepped inside and lifted Beatriz carefully, her body light and trembling. She clung weakly to my shoulder, still murmuring the same name. "Marisol." "We've got you," I whispered. "You're safe now." Ayana pulled her cloak around Beatriz, activating the cloaking field around them. Graham and I cloaked as well, the air bending around us in a soft distortion. The footsteps reached the chamber. We moved. Silent. Invisible. Fast. The Inquisition guards entered the underhall just as we slipped past them, their torches casting long shadows across the torture devices. One paused beneath the stretching rack, staring up at the empty cage. We were already gone. We didn't stop moving until we reached the outer cloister garden, where the night air was cool and quiet. Only then did Beatrice speak clearly, her voice thin but steady. "I didn't betray the convent," she said. "I didn't betray God. I only wanted to save her." Ayana knelt beside her. "Save who?" Beatrice's eyes filled with tears. "My daughter, Marisol. She's hidden in an orphanage in the countryside. I had to protect her. I had to gather proof, to confront the man who threatened her." Graham exchanged a look with me, not judgment, just understanding. Beatrice continued, "I used the machine, the laptop, to gather letters, records, anything that would expose him. I didn't know they would take it. I didn't know they would find it." Ayana placed a hand on her shoulder. "We'll make sure she's safe." Beatrice nodded, trembling. "I must go to her. Tonight. Before they take her from me forever." Ayana stood. "Sister Beatrice and I will go save Marisol." I helped Beatrice to her feet. She leaned heavily on Ayana, but her resolve was unmistakable. "Marisol," she whispered again. "My little one." Ayana activated her cloak, enveloping both herself and Beatrice in a soft distortion. "We'll meet you back at the outer agency," she said, "once Marisol is safe." And then they were gone, slipping into the night, heading toward the countryside. Graham turned to me. "All right," he said. "Let's go get that laptop." The mission split cleanly. Ayana and Beatrice to the orphanage. Graham and I to the tribunal chamber. The upper levels of the convent were quieter than the underhall, but no less dangerous. Graham and I moved through the stone corridors under cloak, staying close to the walls, listening for any sign of movement. The beacon tracker pulsed softly in my hand. The laptop's battery signature was close. Very close. We reached a narrow alcove overlooking the corridor outside the tribunal chamber. Voices echoed below, sharp, authoritative, tense. Graham motioned for silence. A group of guards stood in formation. At their center was a tall man in ornate clerical robes, the Monsignor. His presence radiated authority, but beneath it was something colder. Ambition sharpened into cruelty. "Prepare my travel guard. We leave for Vatican City within the hour." One guard hesitated. "Monsignor, the night is deep. The roads." "The roads are irrelevant," the Monsignor snapped. "The Holy Father must see this unholy contraption immediately." My pulse tightened. He meant the laptop. The Monsignor continued, voice dropping into a calculating whisper. "This object will prove my vigilance, my loyalty, my worth. When I place it in the Pope's hands, he will understand that I alone uncovered the heresy festering in this convent." He paused, then his tone hardened. "Put Sister Beatrice on the stretching rack immediately. I want every secret torn from her before I depart." Graham's jaw tightened. The Monsignor wasn't just ambitious. He was ruthless, and unaware she had already escaped. A small detachment of guards broke off and headed directly to the torture chamber. Graham watched their movement, then shifted his attention to the courtyard where the Monsignor's departure preparations were already underway. The beacon tracker pulsed again, the laptop's signal edging toward the outer gate. Moments later, the detachment returned, tense, speaking in clipped whispers to their captain. One gestured sharply back toward the torture chamber, miming a broken lock. The Monsignor slowed just enough to hear the report. His jaw tightened, his eyes hardened. No outburst. Just a decision. "Double the escort," he said. "We leave now." Graham's tone was flat. "He will keep the laptop close and tightly guarded." "Which puts it on the road with him," I said. "Exactly. Open terrain. Fewer variables." We moved along the edge of the courtyard, staying outside the tightening ring of guards. Horses were being brought forward, saddles checked, straps pulled tight. The laptop's signal settled near the center of the formation. We slipped toward the convent's small stable, cloaked and silent. 2 horses stood saddled, likely prepared for messengers or guards. Graham checked the straps with quick efficiency. I placed a hand on the saddle, extending the cloak field over the animal. The horse vanished. Graham did the same with the second. We mounted, fully cloaked, and exited through a side gate, keeping parallel to the Monsignor's route. His escort rode ahead on the main road, their movement steady and organized as they left the convent grounds. The countryside beyond Sevilla stretched out in muted shapes: fields, olive groves, low stone walls, and the pale dust of the road under moonlight. In 1492, these roads were quiet at night, carrying little more than the occasional traveler or farmer returning late. The silence worked in our favor. Graham glanced over. "We shadow from distance," he said. "Pick the stretch. Secure the laptop and get it the hell out of this century." I nodded. Mounted pursuit, cloaking devices engaged. Invisible to history. We followed the escort into the Andalusian night, already mapping the interception in our heads. We kept pace with the escort, cloaked and silent, moving through the Andalusian countryside as if we were part of the night itself. The laptop's battery signature pulsed steadily from the Monsignor's saddlebag. A bright, impossible anomaly in a century that believed storms were divine messages and illness was punishment. Graham angled his horse forward, accelerating just enough to slip ahead of the formation. He didn't signal, he didn't need to. His intent was clear, he'd already chosen the extraction point. The road north from Sevilla was shaped by centuries of conquest. Roman stone had long since eroded. Moorish engineering had faded under Christian neglect. By 1492, the path was a rough artery connecting villages that lived under the tightening grip of the Spanish Inquisition. The Inquisition wasn't chaos. It was bureaucracy sharpened into fear. Tribunals kept meticulous records. Confessions were catalogued like inventory. Accusations traveled faster than truth. And men like the Monsignor thrived in that climate, ambitious, devout, and convinced that cruelty proved loyalty. He rode with the stiff posture of a cleric who believed the world should make way for him. Graham found what he needed: a fallen branch, thick and heavy, lying where nature had dropped it. He leaned down, gripped it, and the cloak field expanded over the wood. The branch vanished. He moved ahead to a narrow stretch where the road pinched between two old olive groves. The escort slowed, tightening formation. The Monsignor adjusted his reins with the awkward tension of a man who rode out of necessity, not skill. Graham waited, measured the rhythm. And then, with surgical precision, he swung. The invisible branch struck the Monsignor square across the upper torso. The impact was sharp, deliberate, unmistakable. The Monsignor's breath left him in a shocked grunt. His body pitched sideways. His foot slipped from the stirrup. He tumbled off the horse, hitting the ground hard and graceless. The guards shouted, scrambling toward him. He clutched his ribs, eyes blazing with outrage. He knew he'd been struck, he felt the blow, but he had no explanation for how. No attacker. No weapon. No movement in the night. His gaze snapped to the nearest guard. "You," he barked, voice cracking with fury. "You struck me. You sabotaged my mount. You dare lay hands on a servant of God." The guard froze, stunned. "Monsignor, I swear I did nothing." "Liar," the Monsignor spat, struggling to his feet with the help of two others. "Treachery hides in plain sight. Arrest him." The accused guard looked around desperately, but the others avoided his eyes. In the Inquisition, accusation was gravity. Once it fell, it crushed everything beneath it. The escort fractured. Their formation broke. Their attention collapsed inward. While they seized the guard, while the Monsignor raged and clutched his bruised ribs, I rode in, cloaked, silent, invisible. The saddlebag hung loose from the horse, the straps half unfastened from the fall. I lifted it cleanly and stabilized the cloak field around it. The laptop vanished into the night with me. Graham dropped the branch exactly where it belonged. We pulled away from the road, moving into the quiet expanse of farmland shaped by centuries of conquest and faith, now briefly touched by a future it would never know. Behind us, the Monsignor continued shouting, furious and shaken, convinced he had uncovered betrayal in his own ranks. He had no idea the true blow had come from a force his century could not imagine. We rode until the last echo of the Monsignor's rage dissolved into the night behind us. The farmland opened into low hills and quiet fields, the kind of landscape that swallowed sound and kept secrets. Graham slowed his horse, letting the cloak field settle into a steady hum around us. The mission was complete. The laptop was secure. Sister Beatrice was alive. Marisol was safe. We angled west toward the rendezvous point, an abandoned granary the outer agency used as a field anchor. It looked like nothing, a collapsed roof, broken beams, dust drifting through the gaps. But inside, beneath the rubble, the air shimmered faintly with the signature of a temporal gate. Graham dismounted first, pulling the cloak off both horses. They reappeared in the moonlight, relieved to be visible again. I stepped inside the granary and activated the return beacon. The shimmer expanded, folding the air inward. A doorway opened, silent, weightless, familiar. We stepped through. The Andalusian night vanished. The outer agency's transit hall replaced it. Clean lines, quiet hum, the faint scent of ionized air. Ayana was already there, standing beside a medical officer and holding a small bundle wrapped in a soft blanket. Marisol. Sister Beatrice stood next to her, eyes red but peaceful, her posture no longer rigid with fear. She looked like someone who had finally stepped out of a nightmare. We approached as a unit, Graham, Ayana, and me, because protocol required it. Field agents did not disperse after a mission. They reported together. They debriefed together. And they stayed until the agency made its determination. The debriefing chamber was quiet, lit only by the soft pulse of the temporal stabilizers embedded in the walls. We stood in a semicircle, Beatrice holding Marisol close, her breath steady but fragile. The outer agency voice filled the room, not loud, not mechanical, but resonant, as if the air itself carried the authority. Field team, extraction successful. Civilian, Agent Beatrice. Dependent, Marisol. Beatrice tightened her hold on her daughter. The voice continued. Assessment complete. Beatrice Dela Cruz is granted full retirement from active duty. She will be relocated to a protected settlement in the countryside. A small village outside Avila. Quiet. Safe. She will receive a home, resources, and anonymity. Her past will not follow her. Beatrice's breath caught. Thank you, she whispered. I don't know how to. The voice softened just slightly. You survived what history should never have asked of you. Now you may live. Ayana stepped forward, touching Beatrice's arm. You're free, she said. Truly. Beatrice nodded, tears slipping down her cheeks. Marisol slept peacefully against her shoulder, unaware of the century she had escaped or the future she had been given. A relocation escort arrived, quiet, respectful, trained for transitions like this. Beatrice looked at us one last time. I will pray for you, she said. Not because you need it, but because I want to. I bowed my head. We'll take it. She stepped through the relocation gate, disappearing into a life that finally belonged to her. The chamber fell silent. The outer agency voice returned. Field team, report to debriefing. Graham exhaled. Home, he said. I nodded. Home. We walked down the corridor together, the hum of the agency settling around us like a familiar heartbeat. The past was behind us. The mission was complete. And Sister Beatrice was free.